And say good afternoon to the person next to you. I want to meet somebody new. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you very much. This is like speed dating. It's done. Your turn is over. Good afternoon and welcome. Good afternoon and welcome to the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network. We're so glad you got here. I never begin anything I say with an apology, but I will today. I want to apologize for the fact that the AAR, the conference convention staff, and the hotel have made these difficulties for us in terms of our place. Our reservation was made on time, early, with 70 people expected, and each one has arrived. And we were assigned what room we were given in the book, and in the meetings at a glance, on the website, and on the app. And then on Monday I got a call saying, we've changed your room. And I'm exceedingly well brought up, and I said, well, that's difficult for us, but we'll cope. Thank you so much. And I sent out, as you know, the notice that we would have a change of location. I hope you got that. And then 20 minutes ago when we arrived here, I noticed the person putting up a sign upstairs for yet another location. So I'm not sure if this is like considered a secret meeting, if somehow security concerns have changed our venue because of the number of people in here who are heavily engaged in wonderful activities in the world. But in any case, congratulations, you're here and we're here, and thank you very much. This is a meeting that has gone on for the last 20 years, which is really kind of amazing. Yeah, I might want to silence those cell phones. That would be a good thing. I'm never sure when the Pope is going to call and find out what Elizabeth is up to. Yeah. And you'll notice that I'm sporting, in the spirit, while you're doing your cell phones, you'll notice that I'm sporting a piece of art. I'm not one who often wears pieces of art, but I am wearing a piece of art, which is made by the Reverend Dr. Katie Cannon. And it's not everybody who has an original piece of art made by Reverend Dr. Katie Cannon. And it celebrates from 1807 to 2007, and you'll tell us about those Presbyterian women. So I said I would wear it today, and I usually would wear pearls in your honor, but today I'm wearing it. I'm going to pass around a number of copies of our sign-up list. If you would like to be on our Google list, you sign up on this list and that will happen. So just make sure they're numbered, so make sure we get them back at the end. Diane New, who's sitting here, my colleague at Water, sitting next to Kelly Stewart, who's so graciously doing the videoing for us today. Diane New will pick those up at the end. So get them, just send them back in her direction. Diane, wave your hand. We come from Water, the Women's Alliance for Theology, Ethics, and Ritual. You should have a Water newsletter in your possession. If you don't, we have a few extras, so we'll make sure you get one before you leave. I want to give a special welcome to a group of students who will introduce themselves. We're so glad that you have come from a college in South Carolina to be with us, and the reason you're here is because your professor was a student of Dr. Cannon. And you're studying, and I know you're studying art, so you'll tell us that when we do our introductions. In recent years in this group, we've taken a critical look at feminist work in religion, at liberation work, and at theology. We have looked at successes and challenges in implementing and maintaining feminist liberation theology programs in academic institutions and in other settings. Several of those sessions have been published in the Journal of Feminist Studies in Religion. Last year, we partnered with the Faith Trust Institute that Marie Fortune directs in Seattle, Washington, working on issues of religion and violence. I'm happy to report that that group's had its own consultation this week at the Carter Center here in Atlanta. So that was a good fruit of last year's work. This year, as per our discussion at the end of our session last year, we're focusing on feminist liberation theologies and the arts. This is a welcome new dimension to our discussion, and I predict it is one that will influence our work for many years to come, integrating what we learned from our four speakers this afternoon and adding our own insights to the mix. Once again, we have the happy experience of collaborating with the Women's Caucus. They will continue today's discussion tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in session A21, 106. Cultivating Minds, the caucus continues that work tomorrow from 9 to 11:30 in the Hyatt Hanover B room. So if you want to continue the conversation from this afternoon, go to Hyatt Hanover Bead, where the Women's Caucus has a wonderful, I give a little shameless plug for the Women's Caucus, a wonderful set of programs during this entire AAR. So I recommend those, and tomorrow morning from 9 to 11:30, the continuation of this discussion plus other papers.
And Mary, since I'm co-chair of the Women's Caucus and we just came from there, the Women's Lounge is right on the same level as the AAR Exhibition Hall. We're just around the corner, so you can find us.
Easy to find. I will represent this group, giving a quick summary of what we do this afternoon, but there will be other speakers, and any of you who are here are welcome. Our speakers, of course, are very welcome, not obliged, but welcome to join that session. And I can assure you that it will be in the spirit of this conversation, because they always have tables and small groups, and it's not a look at the backs of people's heads, talking heads kind of AAR session. So I think you'll enjoy it very much. So I thought we could just take a moment together in silence, given what's happening in our world, if we could just acknowledge the need for our work of feminist liberation theologies to bring about justice and peace. With that in mind, let me review our usual format for this meeting. We start with introductions. We will hear from each of you right now. And I know you think it's going to take all afternoon. Trust me, it will not. And we will simply name ourselves and say something about a location or a work that we're doing or an art we're engaged in, and pass on to the next person. Just so you can see who's in the room, you can hear who's in the room, and you can get a sense that these are your colleagues around the world. Then Elizabeth Schuster-Fiorenza, my colleague, will introduce our speakers, and they are 4, and I'll let her do that at the time. They will speak for 7, 8, maybe 9 minutes, and then we will move into small discussion groups with them and with one another. And then at the end of that period, we'll have time for plenary discussion. We'll reflect together on what some of the common themes are, and then we'll look ahead to what we might focus on next year. So with that as a welcome, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mary Hunt. I'm the co-director of WATER, the Women's Alliance for Theology, Ethics, and Ritual. I write about feminist issues in religion, but I also enjoy the art of cooking. I like to cook. And I think a well-set table and a well-prepared meal with friends is an art form that is feminist and liberation. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm Andrea Tucker, Vanderbilt University, currently writing dissertation on mourning and celebration in transgender politics.
I'm Gabrielle Corazzini from Switzerland. I'm here out of personal interest and with my partner Elizabeth. Everybody from Switzerland.
I'm Kate Common. I am from Boston University. My work is in feminist practical theology, biblical interpretation, and I use graphic design and film also in my work.
My name is Ashley Thiering. I'm also at Boston University in the PhD program of practical theology, and I work on trauma theology focused on survivors of domestic violence and church response.
I'm Lois Daly, 32 years now at Siena College in upstate New York.
I'm Ana Avalos. I'm from St. Edward's University, and I'm interested in the art of learning.
I'm Karen Hessel. I'm with the Spiritual Alliance to Stop Intimate Violence, and we've been working with activist scholars and Marie Fortune to bring these theological education and issues of violence, gender violence, to academia.
I'm Allison Geist-Johnson, Proctor School of Theology, Virginia Union University, Director of the Doctor of Ministry program. My work is centered in helping us to understand and resolve issues of ethnic distrust.
I'm Anissa Johnson. I'm her daughter. I'm going to Henrico High School, and I'm interested in the art of pottery and glass painting.
My name is Erica Carol. I'm at Union Presbyterian Seminary. I'm a student of Dr. Katie Cannon and a PhD student, currently writing my dissertation on, which is entitled, Doing the Unexpected, a Womanist Critique of Kara Walker's Black Paper Silhouettes. And Kara Walker is an African-American contemporary artist, basically out of Georgia, who critiques the racism and all of the other isms through the medium of black paper silhouettes. And so she uses that southern genteel antebellum South to critique contemporary society.
Hi, I'm Deanna Daniels. I'm from Lehigh University, and I'm currently interested in Afrofuturist, embodied expression, and all that pertains.
Hello, my name is Simon Joseph Crow. I'm a PhD student at Union Presbyterian Seminary, and Dr. Kevin's other students, PhD students. And my art is culinary arts as well.
A man after my own heart.
I'm Emily Towns. I'm Dean at Vanderbilt University Divinity School. And my art is trying to be creative, imaginative, and allow a school to dream and not be an institution.
My name is Teresa Yugar. I teach at Cal State University, Los Angeles in the Liberal Studies and Chicano Studies Department. And my art or creativity is creating ecological curriculum, ecological feminist curriculum.
My name is Marcia Thrall. I am a Master Theological Studies candidate at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. I always have to say that. My area of focus is biblical studies, specifically biblical theology, and my thesis focuses on the problem of mass incarceration in the United States through the lens of black women.
My name is Phyllis Gerard. I'm not an academic. I'm an attorney. I'm also a Wiccan priestess. I was one of the first public Wiccan priestesses way back. And I'm the vice chair of the Parliament of the World's Religions and the convener of the inaugural Women's Assembly. And I'm really thrilled to be with this remarkable, amazing crew. I'm an outside agitator.
Sitting in the right place. So, my name is Lisa Beth White. I'm a PhD candidate from Boston University School of Theology, also practical theology. I'm from the Southern Extension campus in Houston.
I was gonna say, I was like,
who's that? Yeah, you guys are like, whoop. My work is around mission in practical theology, so contemporary practices of mission, I've just decided to audaciously step out and call myself a feminist missiologist, because there aren't any people who labeled like that, so I figured I could make it up. With lots of collaboration from fabulous feminist scholars. And my art is raising fabulous daughters, one of whom I lent to water this summer, Mary Grace.
Marcel Granell, PhD candidate at California Institute of Integral Studies in the Women's Spirituality Department. Currently finishing, hopefully, my dissertation study on, on women's ordination across 3 faith traditions and their experiences over the last 40 years.
I'm Shannon Clarkson, and I work with women in my community, which is Guilford, Connecticut, on issues of incarcerated women and women who have been released from prison.
My name is Hisako Kinukawa from Tokyo, Japan. I'm director of Center for Feminist Theology and Ministry in Japan. I'm working for Asia in general.
Mercy, I'm Udiyoye from Ghana. I organize educational events on women in religion and culture at Trinity Theological Seminary. My passion is to try and bring gender justice and gender sensitivity to theological institutions that still do not know that women exist.
I'm Kathy McCallie. I teach at Phillips Theological Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I teach ethics and ministerial leadership, practical theology, and I'm also the director of the Doctor of Ministry program. And my art is gardening.
Hi, I'm Nami Kim. I teach at Spelman College here in Georgia, Atlanta. My art is color. I color Mandela for my own study.
I'm Denise Starkey from the College of St. Scholastica up in Duluth, Minnesota, where it's really cold. And I'm the chair of the theology department and the director of women's engineering current work is on crafting a nomadic spirituality at home for survivors of violence. And my art is now mosaic.
I'm Liz Dowling, and I'm a lecturer in biblical studies at Australian Catholic University, and I'm also involved in teaching biblical studies to women in PNG, Papua New Guinea.
Julie Hillman Rubio from St. Louis University. I teach Christian ethics and try to bring some feminist perspective to Catholic theology and marriage, family. Do what I can. My sons are the artists in our family.
I'm Becky Davis. I'm a professor of religion and Christian education at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina. And I teach, my area is teaching how to be engaged in justice with a particular passion in child advocacy. These are my students.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Rowell. I'm one of Becky Davis's students in her Womanist Feminist Liberation Theology and Pediology class. And our class is exploring how womanist, feminist, and liberation must have an art expression. So for the end of our class, we have to do an art expression and a final paper. My art expression is combining my love of videography and my call story. So I'm filming my own call story and also interviewing mentors of mine about their personal call story. And my final topic of my paper is looking at the expansion of women's Bible study curriculum through the feminist biblical studies interpretation lens.
Cool. Yeah.
My name is Macy Cottom. I'm a student at Presbyterian College as well. I'm majoring in Christian education and have a great passion for it, and I hope I get to continue that in seminary. My art expression for our class is coloring in a journal. So taking art and putting it into a journal has been a very liberating experience.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm a senior at Presbyterian College as well. I'm a Christian education major, and my art form is
Hi, my name is Lee Ramsey. I'm also a student at Presbyterian College. My art form, I like to tell stories, so my art form is going to be, I'm going to put together a comic book of my personal experiences that happened around campus and growing up.
I'm Carly Tate. I'm also a student at Presbyterian College, and for our final art project, I have chosen the form of poetry.
Hello everybody, my name is Sam Shields. I am also from Presbyterian College. I'm a Christian educator and a Christian education major as well. And the final project that I'm trying to piece together is using a modernist art form in watercolor to express sensibilities.
Hi, I'm Erica Gottfredson. I'm also a student of Becky Davis's. I'm an English major, and my art form for the class is going to be creative nonfiction, so taking what we're learning in class and kind of using that to voice my own personal experiences.
I'm Levy Shepard, yet again another student. I'm a senior history and religion major at PC, and for my art expression, I am learning to channel my frustrations and my own personal experiences within the LGBTQIA community on our campus, and channeling that into somewhere, anywhere other than my head. Onto the page, onto a canvas, onto anything that I can project it onto.
My name is Frances Hotink. I'm also a student of Becky's. My art expression is still kind of in the works. Something with photography of women, other people's photography, my own photography, and trying to express something other than my own experiences and learn something from the other people around me.
I'm Emma Dupre. I'm a student at Presbyterian College. I'm a junior, psychology major at political science and women's and gender study minor. My term paper topic is the misconception of the ideal feminist, and my art form is cooking, which I hope to do a lot of over the upcoming Thanksgiving break.
My name is Anne Hillman. I'm a PhD candidate at Boston University School of Theology. I am currently working on my dissertation, hoping to finish it up this spring. And I am looking at the relationship of Christian theology to interreligious dialogue. My dissertation looks at the body of Christ metaphor as a way to understand Christian identity in a world of faiths.
Hi, I'm Carrie Whipple. I'm a doctoral student at Drew University, and I look at the intersection of trauma in the New Testament, particularly around issues of intimate violence and intimate justice. And wheel throwing keeps me sane through my doctoral program. The pottery, not the actual throwing. Though that could help.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa Schaefer. I'm an undergraduate theology student at St. Louis University. My senior capstone that I'm working on is looking at machismo culture in Latin America and reimagining the Virgin Mary and how that could change sexual ethics there and in the United States. And my art form is poetry and watercolors.
Hi everyone, my name is Abby Amico, and I'm also an undergraduate student at St. Louis University, and I'm really interested in working to understand what it means to be a liberated woman in the Catholic tradition. And I love reading.
I'm Noelle Yoink. I'm a sophomore student at St. Louis University studying women's and gender studies, African American studies, and theology. And I'm really interested in looking at Black liberation movements and the intersections between gender, queerness, and religion within those movements.
Hi, my name is Liz Vestal. I'm a senior at St. Louis University, and I'm really interested in what the Catholic Church can learn from womanist theology.
I'm Elaine Wainwright, a biblical scholar between New Zealand and Australia at the moment. My current project this year has been writing an ecological commentary on the Gospel of Matthew. I'm interested in that intersection between ecology and feminism and how it can impact in both areas.
I'm Barbara Rossing. I teach New Testament at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. I was one of Elizabeth's doctoral students years ago. And I'm writing an ecological commentary on the book of Revelation. And I'm interested in eschatology and the arts, especially images of the tree of life for the healing of the world and how images can help us envision a future on earth of healing.
I'm Sue Horner. I'm a scholar in residence, gender studies and religion at the American College of Greece in Athens, Greece. And I'm actually a former student of both Kate Cannon and Elizabeth many years ago.
I'm Sherry Kling. I'm a doctoral candidate at Claremont School of Theology, where I'm in the process studies program and integrating process theology with transformative spiritual practice, especially dream work. And my art is I'm a performing songwriter, and I also recently chaired the art section at the Seizing an Alternative Whitehead Conference in Claremont last June.
I'm Meredith Minister, and I teach at Shenandoah University in Winchester, Virginia. My art is teaching, but I also make bread, and I'm really excited because next semester I'm teaching a course on bread and religion.
My name is Nazia. I'm a master's student at Claremont School of Theology. I'm in the Interreligious Studies program where I'm looking at Islam and Hinduism and trying to see where folk identities fit within the whole interfaith movement. Oh, my art is photography and poetry.
I'm Kiriana Flores. I'm a doctoral student at Claremont School of Theology with Hebrew, Bible, and Ancient Near Eastern religions. My focus is children's theory, and my art is spinning and knitting, so here with me.
I'm Marvin Ellison. I'm at Union Theological Seminary in New York. I think my art form is schmoozing over good food. I appreciate those who want to share their culinary art.
I'm Sylvia Thorson Smith. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm retired and teaching at Grinnell College, where I taught sexuality courses and a whole variety of gender and women's studies courses. As far as arts, it's great to hear all these different things that you're doing. I'm addicted to the AAR. I'm not teaching anymore, but I love coming here and hearing these things. Music, I love music, And I also would say that my art form when I was teaching was subverting the whole pedagogy of the traditional classroom. So I brought crayons and paper. I love color and coloring. And I brought crayons and paper for students in every single class I taught to get them out of their heads and draw. So drawing is an art form that I love.
I am Jane Frederickson, the Executive Director of Faith Trust Institute in Seattle, and I'm here working with Marie Fortune. And my art, Mary, you nailed it for me. It's cooking and presently, but it's been crafts when I was little, it was sewing, it was all kinds of things, but today it's cooking and eating, and it's cranberry chutney over the weekend, getting ready.
You can find the recipe.
If I can find the recipe.
I'm Marie Fortune. I'm the founder and senior analyst at Faith Trust Institute. I'm a pastor in the United Church of Christ. And I guess my art at this point is occasionally playing the banjo.
I'm Diane New. I'm at Water, co-founder and co-director with Mary. My art is creating rituals using the visual arts, the arts of word, and especially music and dance. And my spiritual art is helping us each remember the beauty in each one of us.
All right. I'm Kelly Stewart. I work at a battle work program in Cambridge with domestic violence perpetrators. My art, I like feminist country music a lot of Loretta Lynn happens that I listen to, and then I can pretty much play Don't Come Home a Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind, so that's a big thing for me. All right.
Go ahead.
We're gonna take it over. All right, here we go.
I'm Natalie Terry. I'm studying in the Licentiate of Sacred Theology program at the Jesuit School in Berkeley. It's essentially the Vatican's credential for you to be able to teach in the seminaries. My focus is feminist sacramental theology, and more specifically, figuring out how to talk about women's ordination and dialogue about it with priests and seminarians.
I'm Kirk Nolan. I'm from Presbyterian College in South Carolina. My specialty is virtue ethics, and I guess my art is parenting. I have 3 small children right now, and it's a very creative process trying to follow them and guide them and lead them and be led by them.
I'm Kayla Stanford. I'm a senior at Presbyterian College. I'm here with the crew studying under Becky Davis. I'm a psychology and Christian education major. In my art, I'm trying to figure out, but I'm studying the stigma that culture puts on the expectations of African American, white, and Hispanic women.
Then we have Jean Hammond came in late.
I'm Jean Hammond. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I try to take lessons from Mary and Diane on how to nag the church about being better. My art is that of trying to learn to be a good grandmother.
Tom Hanks, I think you're the last, and then we're done. No, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Robin Jones, and I'm a researcher, and I do some work on generational poverty in both North and South Carolina, and I have a great appreciation for points of view from art as it relates to theology.
Tom, quickly.
Yeah, I'm Tom Hanks, 51 years in Latin America, Buenos Aires, the last 22, trying to write about the Bible, studying women in the Bible, poor and poverty, relationship to oppression, and sexual minorities of all types, of whom I now have 35 in the Bible. We started with 3 kinds of eunuchs in 1 verse in Jesus, and it's downhill all the way. And we've finished now everything, covering the whole Bible, except Psalms. So I'm very glad to be back to being a professor of poetry and studying the Psalms, which is my master's thesis at Northwestern, Garrett Northwestern, and my doctorate at Concordia. And I taught Psalms every year. I have 22 years in Costa Rica, and now I'm back to writing on the Psalms as my culmination to finish the Bible.
Thanks,
Got
Tom.
chapters and things here.
Wonderful.
I am Elizabeth Schüssler Fiorenza, and my art is juggling different organizations. So I need to leave earlier today. But before I do so, I want to invite all of you. There is a reception tonight at 8:30 in the Hyatt Tech Room, and the reception is of Feminist Studies in Religion. The Hyatt Regency Tech Room, yeah. Okay, and I have the great honor to invite our illustrious panel. Well, all my friends, so it's a delight to do so. To my right, usually to my left, but today is Professor Katie Cannon. It's Reverend Dr. Katie Cannon. She is the Annie Scales Rogers Professor of Christian Ethics at Union Presbyterian Seminary in Richmond, Virginia. The first African-American woman ordained in the United Presbyterian Church in the US, Katie focuses her work in the areas of Christian ethics, womanist theology, and women in religion and society. She has lectured widely on theological and ethical topics, and she is the author or editor of numerous articles and books, including Katie's Canon, my favorite, Womanism and the Soul of the Black Community and Black Womanist Ethics. She's a longtime collaborator in the Journal of Feminist Studies in Religion, and she will speak to us today on art work and womanist work. The most reverend, I think, very reverend, Dr. Cynthia Briggs-Kittredge is Dean and President of the Seminary of the Southwest in Austin, Texas. She is a professor of New Testament and leads retreats on the intersection of scripture, spirituality, and preaching for Christian leaders. Cynthia is a contributor to the New Oxford Annotated Bible and the Woman's Bible Commentary, and the author of Conversations with Scripture, the Gospel of John, and a lot of the way. A lot of the way trees were walking, poems from the Gospel of Mark. She has authored and co-edited several other works. She also serves as assisting priest at the Episcopal Church of the Good Shepherd in Austin. Her topic is today poetry as biblical interpretation, a list of the ways trees were walking. And Dr. Monica Maher, I needed to look for his name. Dr. Monica Maher is researches and teaches in Quito, Ecuador, beautiful place, at the intersection of ecumenical studies and social ethics, including interreligious perspectives on gender, sexuality, and human rights, as well as the relationship between spirituality and ethics. Her publications have focused on Latin American women's theological creativity in response to gender-based violence and women's interreligious peace building. She served as the Associate Director of Harvard University's Committee on Human Rights Studies and taught at the Divinity School. Ordained in the United Church of Christ, she was recently named an International Rotary Peace Fellow for 2016. Congratulations. Congratulations. And she will speak on feminist liberation theologies within the museums of Quito, Ecuador. And last but not least is Professor Elizabeth Ursig, She is a professor of religious studies at Mesa Community Arts. Her book, Women, Ritual Power, Placing Female Imagery of God in Christian Worship, was published by SUNY Press in 2014. Dr. Olsik is also a board member of the Arizona Interfaith Movement and adjunct professor in the Women's Spirituality Program at the California Institute of Integral Studies. She co-chairs the ARR-SPL Women's Caucus. She is a cellist, pianist, and composer, and her music CD is titled Unspoken Touch. It resulted in a fellowship at the Yale Institute for Sacred Music. She will speak today on making things right, the importance of ritual in feminist liberation theologies. Please welcome all.
Okay. Anyone who's ever taken a class from me know I do high impact aerobic ethics. So I've asked my students to make sure each of you get a handout in about a minute. 1 minute, because that's taking away 1 minute from my speaking time. Everybody should have a paper by now. Everybody in the room should have a paper.
Share one? Sure. Thank you.
It's 30 seconds, you got 10 more seconds. Any extras, make sure you give them back to the They want to get a degree, don't they? I'll pull it in a minute. It's a great idea. Good afternoon. Everyone has a copy? Only one copy. You can't keep more than one copy. The title of my paper today is Antecedents for Womanist Artistic Expressions. When I was 8 years old, I started doodling, creating all types of abstract images. And this afternoon, I want to talk about 6 categories of images in my portfolio. Now, the specific antecedents for my artistic woman expressions are directly intertwined and inseparable from the intractable horror of living in a world of blackness crammed inside of dominating whiteness. Being formed and informed within this web of racist etiquette was traumatic. I grew up in a society that declared it was against the law for me to play in tax-supported public parks. It was against the law for me to swim in tax-supported public swimming pools. In this landscape of white supremacy, to swing on swings, to slide down slides, to build castles in the sandboxes where white children played resulted in swift punishment. As I continue reflecting on the antecedents for my artistic expression, I recall how my classmates, we would stand up, place our hand over our hearts, and sing all the verses to "My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty." And yet each time we had to remind ourselves and be self-consciously aware that it was against the law for us to go to the public library. Nor could we borrow a book from the white side versus the Negro colored side of the tiny bookmobile. It was a transgression for African American children to join national organizations such as the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. It was even against the law for black children to sign up to participate in the Kannapolis citywide spelling contest. So complete was the circle of segregation, the rigidly enforced laws of white supremacy, that walking through the door of the YWYMCA for after-school activities was a matter of life and death. Therefore, the first 2 black images at the top of the page symbolize how I cope with living in the killing fields of Jim Crow and Jane Crow. Sometimes I call these black and white images feeling pictures, emotional symbols and visual motifs that come forth straight from the heart. And at other times I refer to my collection of black and white images as prayer offerings, glimpses of my emotional cup running over, enable me to fight against a degenerating sense of nobodiness. Now this third image is a testimony to my friends and therapists who told me my drawings were more than feeling pictures. that they were more than prayer offerings, but that my doodles are genuine works of art. All I know and all I've ever known is that doodling enables me to make visible the invisible trauma and tragedy swirling around me. The artistic subject matter representing the fourth image are the kinds of doodles that keep me on this side of the thin line between sanity and insanity. The freedom I experience when I doodle is knowing that whatever I create is always right and never wrong. By using the raw materials of pen and pencil and markers, I express inescapable aspects of living a hard-scrabble life. The curly cues and the building blocks in that fourth image serve as containers strong enough to hold the anger I have about the cruelty in this world. The fifth composition is representative of the fact that when I sit down to doodle, I never get reading, writing processes that connect directly to the learning that occurs when we engage in physical activities. Now, the sixth and final image represents my solidarity with the movement Black Lives Matter. My drawings that fit under the category of the image you see in number 6, Black Lives Matter, connect me to the core of my being, to the killing of Trayvon Martin, to the death of Sandra Bland, to the massacre last June when 9 African-American sisters and brothers were murdered in cold blood while participating in Wednesday night Bible study in Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. All in all, what I'm saying is the antecedents for my womanist artistic expressions interface my life text with the emotionally charged dialectical tensions embedded in my existential context. Sometimes I sit in silence for long hours, just doodling. These holy moments are filled with mystery and with meaning. A time when I petition God, a transcendent power, to help me in my state of helplessness. In essence, the physical act of creating each of these 6 categories of doodles connect me to the source of courageous resilience so that I can keep on keeping on doing the work my soul must have. Thank you. And I have another pen to present to Monica.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Kate Elizabeth.
Yes. Feminist biblical interpretation claims the authority of women to read and interpret Scripture, not only to conform and submit to the text, but to ask questions, resist, read against the grain, and in community with others find bread, not stone. The outcome of the interpretive process is reproclamation or creative actualization, as Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza writes in Wisdom Ways. Scripture has a rhetorical character to move, to motivate, to form community, and to cause to act. I have been teaching preaching and biblical studies for many years, and early on I always included an assignment that used non-verbal medium to express an interpretation of text. And so today I just want to briefly tell the story of how I wrote a poem cycle, a lot of the way trees were walking, poems from the Gospel of Mark. And I'm just going to follow one theme, which is that of worthiness, courage, and speaking. Years ago, I wrote a paper on the prayer of humble access, which is an old prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. We are not worthy so much as to gather up the crumbs under thy table. And I analyzed this prayer, its history, the scripture on which it was based, Mark 7, and just puzzled over the fact that the prayer is about unworthiness, but the story in Mark 7 is about courage and worthiness. The worthiness of the mother and her daughter to eat under the table. Worthy, she's healed, as you know, Jesus says to her, "For this word you may go." She spoke. I concluded that article by saying that the heroes in the Gospel of Mark are the brave ones who go seize the power they need. And I concluded that there should be more prayers written about those people. Well, who was going to write those prayers if I didn't? So there was a project in the Episcopal Church collecting women's prayers and poems, and I wrote a poem about the characters in the story in Mark 2 who are the ferocious friends of the paralyzed man, called Fierce Industry. Then years went by and I got interested in the names of the moon in different months. And I got to the February moon, which was Wolf Moon, and I thought about the phrase in Mark, and he was with the wild beasts. So I wrote about a poem about the temptation from the perspective of a she-wolf in the desert watching Jesus. And I contrasted the steady watchfulness of the animals in the desert with the sleepiness of the disciples at Gethsemane. Then, one day I was at an SBL session, and it was by Luke and Emerson Powery, and they talked about the silent and inert characters in the Gospel of Mark, especially the sleeping daughter, for example, who have no agency or consciousness. So then I taught the Gospel of Mark every fall, and in 2012 I was teaching it, and I started thinking about the word beginning, and early in the morning when I'm usually writing, I started writing about beginning, and it became a poem, and then another poem about beginning, and then another poem. And I was also simultaneously auditing a class in theopoetics with a colleague of mine. I was influenced by Nicholas Slee in England, who, her Book of Mary, which interprets Mary through poetry, and I was very, very moved by Jane Schaberg's posthumous book of essays, The Death and Resurrection of the Author, which includes her poetry. So it happened that after this first poem about beginning, I moved through the chapters of Mark and wrote at least one poem a day for several months. And the rule was, don't overthink it, play, see what happens. And I was in a state of ecstasy and concentration that resembled a little bit what Katie talked about, just a prayerful state. And so I was ecstatic, blissed out, and like the women at the tomb. To make something is to take a risk, to take charge, to talk back, to speak, to make a mark. The first poem in the book says, "Open my lips, make me a mouth." Thinking about the inert characters in Mark, I decided to speak with particularly the animals in Mark who don't have a voice, and the animals who are also compared with children who don't have a voice, who are paralyzed or dead or otherwise under the table. So here's one, imagining the children under the table. Feast of Crumbs. The whole litter convened beneath the feast, scrambled, tumbled, warm fur shining. Not since they were weaned have they been filled. Let in from the raw backyard, spilled bread, red as meat, take and eat, then sleep the sleep of the healed. I thought about the woman's daughter who was healed from a distance, and I wrote antonym. What is the opposite of holy? In my child, opposed to holy is cutting herself and gagging, pulling out her hair, scarring and piercing the smooth and the whole. I shout out for holy, call by name the one who owns her claws, possesses her maw. I cry for holy to contend and destroy, mighty, decisive, buy her back for herself. The community of my colleagues and sisters was instrumental in getting the poems out of the morning journal and into community. My friends and colleagues in biblical studies read these poems and said other people would like to read them. Elizabeth Struthers Malvin heard them and said she'd like to publish them, and I sent them all to her. There were 100, and she read them and gave me the most wonderful gift of editorial, a few editorial suggestions that made all the difference. A couple more minutes? I've lost track of time.
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, what have I learned? Why poetry?
20 seconds.
Not preaching. Not preaching. teaching, not prescriptive, not pious, playful. Follow the story, follow the arc, the text, and then don't. Freedom. I didn't use the word Jesus except once. I didn't use the word God. I discovered the power of the story of Mark, the stories of the characters of courage, the radical mystery and paradox of Mark, the scholarly issues that weren't solved, and the way that the story of Mark struggles with the stubborn and beautiful enigma of how to be human. Worthiness, courage, the risk of speaking, and speech saving your life.
Well, first I give thanks to Mary and Elizabeth for the invitation to be here. And also I bring warmest greetings from Maria Fernanda Cartagena and Diana Rivera, who conceptualized and implemented what is the Spiritualities Project in the Foundation Museums of the City of Quito. And I want to talk a bit about that project today, real briefly. And I've served as an advisor over the last year. And we've explored the opportunities and challenges of attempting to incorporate critical feminist theological perspectives into traditional religious public spaces. Quito is known as the religious colonial capital of Latin America, as a monolithic Roman Catholic city. And of course, in reality, it's filled with religious diversity, which reflects a dynamic social cultural processes, which are in turn linked to international movements for racial, gender, sexual, and economic justice. So the Spiritualities Project of the Foundation attempts to make visible some of this religious diversity, highlighting spiritual expressions which do resist hierarchical systems of power challenged by critical feminist liberation theologies. And it's all part of a larger process to decolonize the definition of a museum itself, which is a product of the Spanish conquest, a place to preserve the past, inanimate objects interpreted by outside experts, and to transform the museum into a fluid space of encounter, of communal creativity and intercultural dialogue, of collective self-representation and social questioning, of living subjects in present and in motion with political agency. So by incorporating other wisdom, subaltern wisdom, to deconstruct dominant readings of history and reality, the whole aim of this project is social transformation. So I'll just give you a small example of what it's involved, describing one museum, because there's 7 museums as part of the project. And the museum I'll describe is called Carmen Alto. And it's actually a monastery. It's called the Monastery of Ancient Carmen of San Jose, which is emblematic in the topography of Quito as the dwelling of the first Ecuadorian saint, Mariana de Jesus. And it's the continuous and current residence of the cloistered Carmelite nuns since the 17th century. So Mariana de Jesus is an iconic religious figure of women's spirituality in Ecuador. She died at age 26 after an intense life of self-torture and spiritual mortification. And the museum actually shows some of the things that she did and the instruments that she used to torture herself. She's a national heroine and still widely revered in Quito today, where 7 out of 10 women currently report being survivors of gender-based violence. Those women report it. Within this spatial historical context, the challenge is to honor the spiritual aspirations of the traditional past of the museum while attempting to clarify and subvert the hierarchical underpinnings of gender-based violence, which really are so often reinscribed in the art. So no doubt a long-term process. It demands ongoing and rigorous interrogation of deeply embedded concepts about the sanctity of women's suffering and sacrifice, the sinfulness of the body and of diverse sexualities, and also the supremacy of white European culture and aristocratic Roman Catholicism. So the exhibit in the Carmen Alto Museum opened yesterday in Quito. I received some photos just now. It's under the title of Mysticism and Social Justice. And it basically includes 3 women's collectives who were invited in to represent themselves and their own spiritualities. So I'm just going to describe 2. The first is the Transgender Project. It's called Distinct Bodies, Same Rights. It's a collective founded in 2002 by feminist lesbian activists Ellie Vasquez and Ana Almeida, with and for transgender persons, and they participate with an exhibit called Transsexual Workers of Quito and the Spirituality of the Street. So it's at once a celebration of the voices and vitality of trans women, but also a lament for multiple assassinations. And just to say, today in the US, this violence is being recognized because today's the National Day of Transgender Remembrance. But in the face of rejection from the Roman Catholic clergy, the transgender collective has developed its own symbols, prayers, and sacred oils. So they've responded with spontaneous rituals on the sites where murders of the members have occurred. And their exhibit carries these social and spiritual expressions of resistance from the street inside. So it's a chance for the general public to view it in a different space and to reinterpret these rituals and expressions in the institutional space of the cloistered nuns. So the exhibit represents an encounter of spiritualities, both very intimate and public, and they're expressions which demand the recognition of the divinity of distinct bodies and the affirmation of equal sexual and gender rights, including the first and most basic, which is the right to life. And just to say, the trans women sex workers highlight 3 aspects of their spirituality in the exhibit. The first is the absence of ethical conflict between their gender identity, their occupation, and their religion, which is for the majority Roman Catholicism. Second, closeness to death in the street, and as a result, a vision of Quito as an urban cemetery. And they've retraced these particular spaces in a memorial campaign called White Heels for Life. They paint red hearts and white heels on the place of assassination. And just one example, like they have Puente de Evelyn in the exhibit, which is the Bridge of Evelyn, where she worked and then where she was killed. And the third is they stress their collective liturgical creativity and courage to respond to extreme violence and to celebrate their lives and the sacredness of themselves in the face of demonization and the complete exclusion by ecclesial institutions. So the second collective is called House of Ochun, and it's a multi-generational cultural center led by Afro-Ecuadorian women for over 20 years. It was founded by an artistic educator, Rosa Mosquera, who received the name Ochun in a dream, and she had never heard of Ochun. And so she interpreted her vision as a call from the ancestors to found this community center. Ochun, the goddess of love and sensuality. Ochun, the African Yoruba Orisha of sweet water, muse of poets, patron protector of the pregnant. Ochun, power of fecundity, of the female generating force. The ancestors lived through so much, says Rosa Mosquera. The music keeps us alive. They can take away everything, but they cannot take away our identity and our happiness. Here in the House of Ochun, there is an overflowing of energy, a hemorrhaging of spirituality. So the installation in the Carmen Alto, again, which opened yesterday, is called Ancestral Sounds in the Afro-Descendant Spiritual Practices of Quito. And so it's an attempt to introduce to the public the vital energy and social force, which is Paso Ochun. Through music, dance, text, images, and invocation of the power, presence, and wisdom of the ancestors. Live drums and dancing, channel between earth and sky, past and present, uniting energies, rhythms of nature of the heart, shared, incarnate, filled with emotion and sensation. The marimba, fluid and vital as water, purifying, cleaning, opening new roads. Rhythms, words, and sounds, historical expressions of strength, hope, creativity, resistance, and liberation. Rhythms, words, sounds, carrying memories of suffering, survival, celebration. Rhythms of beauty, of Afro-descendant bodies, spirits, unrelinquished, sources of resilience, currents of energy, courage of the community. Presente. Presente. So just to conclude with some initial results, again, this just opened yesterday, but in the whole process to prepare the exhibit, and there was one more women's collective, but there was an incredible vitality and thirst to participate on their part, and also surprising, just spontaneous solidarity which emerged in their own intercultural artistic dialogue. So, ongoing challenges. We continue to work on like teasing out the hierarchical underpinnings in the traditional permanent exhibits because we really haven't touched those. But, and also the tragic implications of what that means for life for many in Quito today. And there was another, or there will be another temporary exhibit that opens next week called Spirituality, Gender, and Everyday Life, which will offer new dimensions of the life of Teresa of Avila, including her challenges to hierarchical ecclesial authority and her powerful written word, helping to deconstruct ahistorical symbols of this submissive sainthood, and also apolitical presentations of an ineffable mysticism for women. But clearly the challenge will be, after the exhibits are dismantled, to keep the perspectives alive. What will help is there's been widespread communal participation beyond the collectives mentioned, many citizens and students, and there'll be dozens of parallel events in the next 6 months, panel presentations and discussions to provoke deeper questioning and make connections. And this will include next week on Wednesday, a huge performance in the bullfighting ring of Quito against gender-based violence. And there'll be about 500 men who read letters that were written by women about their experience of gender-based violence. So it's an attempt for men also to own and transform the violence. And then following that, there'll be a huge discussion publicly about it. And just remaining questions, of course, are many, and we continue to ask how to deepen the dialogue between spirituality, theology, arts, and politics in the public discourse, and how to strengthen the growing spiritual solidarity across social movements in order to have it become a significant progressive public presence in the face of really entrenched hegemonic morality. Thank you.
Thank you. The power of all the speeches that have been given so far, and hopefully I'm going to end with bang. I'm here today with a strong message about the need for more feminist ritualizing, and I hope those of us in this room that we can actually start doing even more about it. Feminist theology is now a well-established field with hundreds of scholars, thousands of books and articles, and millions who've been exposed to this material. Yet many still believe that you cannot be a feminist and be religious. Many still believe that our major world religions do not believe in the equality of women and men. This is why feminist theology began over 40 years ago, to tell the real good news. And yet today, when I walk in the classroom, my undergraduate students have never heard of it. Why? The answer, for me, is that most religious institutions are not preaching and ritualizing these messages about equality. Some religions are flat out against it. Others accept it theologically but don't want to offend anyone. I want to thank all of you in this room who are doing this work because it is very difficult to do. Some feminist theology is being ritualized, but more often than not, it is a study group or women's circle or something outside formal church structures. This is wonderful and necessary ritualizing. But until the whole congregation ritualizes these messages for all of its members, feminist theology will always be seen as a special interest theology for the few who identify with it, which reinscribes marginalization on the very group it was meant to uplift. Feminist theology is meant to raise the consciousness and belief of all. Theology becomes accepted tradition through consistent, persistent, and universal communal ritualizing. In Christian circles, the regular Sunday service is where believers learn about their faith. Regardless of how robust and multifaceted the religion might be, institutional religions streamline their messages during worship into what they hope will be the accepted version of the faithful. A theology can easily be judged as heresy in the court of public opinion without communal ritualized enactment, even if it has denominational support from theologians and leaders working within the tradition. Some might say feminist liberation theologies have already suffered this fate in a variety of ways. Those who want to maintain patriarchal power understand this. According to my research, once women's ordination battles were settled, the next line of resistance was to make sure that liturgy did not change. particularly regarding the centrality of the maleness of God. The largest firing of professional church women in the United States happened in the 1990s at the Reimagining Conference when feminist theology was expressed in ritual. Overtly performing feminist theologies in Sunday worship became dangerous after this event, and since then, those who are against feminist theology feel emboldened to challenge it anywhere it appears. This is why my undergraduates have not heard about it. I want to help change this trend. For over 12 years, I've studied institutional Christian worship settings where feminist liberation theologies have succeeded in transforming the communities where they are being expressed. For my book, Women, Ritual, and Power, Placing Female Imagery of God in Christian Worship, which was published by SUNY Press in 2014, I chose to study Sophia's feminist theology, which focuses on the female imagery of God in the Bible. I did this because expressing God as she was a noticeable feminist worship statement. Also, expressing God as she exposed strident counterclaims of God as he, revealing how sexism continues to function in church settings. In the book, I highlight 4 communities that were courageous enough to confront this form of patriarchy in the United Methodist, Roman Catholic, Evangelical Lutheran, or Presbyterian churches through ritual, and were ultimately successful in sustaining their feminist liberation expressions during communal worship. The biggest key to success that I found was something I call strategic emplacement. Emplacement is a geological term for when a softer rock melts and moves into the cracks of a harder rock, and then either adheres to it or cracks the harder rock. Emplacement is also an act of placing, and my theoretical contributions to ritual studies is to bring the category of place back into the conversation, not as location, but as action. Being strategic means to be intentional and take a long-term view. Many people have tried introducing feminist theology into worship, but they stopped once they faced resistance. In the communities I studied, resistance fueled their certainty about what needed to be overcome and dismantled. Conflict fueled their commitment, not stopped it. In my research, I identified 4 essential resources that were necessary to make significant ritual change. I'm really hoping that this book becomes a blueprint and beginning of a conversation to give people ideas of how they can do this. First, they had charismatic leaders with the authority and interest to make the change. There really has to be leadership in worship in some way. But second, they had to have a committed core of the community that would help them make this change. New worship takes a lot of new prayers, new ways of doing things, new ministries, new organization. Third, they had to have members who were willing to speak about their interior prayer experiences and why this is important and why this outpictures their faith journey. It is a beginning of the multiplicities of images of God and Spirit. Fourth, they felt called to evangelize and spread this message. As religious feminists, we are all united in the goal of seeing gender equality in our religions. If the institutions where we worship, either institutionally or on a local level, are not teaching, preaching, singing, and praying that women are equal to men in the eyes of God and society, then we need more expression of feminist theology. It's that simple. So I ask you now, ritual specialists in the room, you are the most important figures in getting more feminist theology performed. How can we support you? Is it worship resources, theological support, institutional strategizing, political cover, networking, supportive relationships? What is it that you need? Theologians and biblical scholars. Sophia theology may be old news in some sense, but it continues to be essential to support a range of imagery of God in worship. In fact, Sophia theology is being embraced again as a trans theology of the female Sophia into the male Jesus. Consider revisiting feminist theologies that are of particular interest to the ritual specialists that you interact with. Religious studies and ritual study scholars like myself. Ritual studies has moved away from liturgics to the study of lived religion. But I would encourage us to re-examine what is happening on the altar in communal worship, not because it has the exclusive power hold on the sacred, but because it is a public foci that reflects power. Communal worship becomes an observable research location, and innovative worship is often contentious behind the scenes. If you are lucky enough, as I was, then membership will expose latent sexism, racism, and classism, and will show us debates in public newsletters, meeting minutes, and magazines. And as faith believers, we are all called to this role. I have some ideas during the question and answer if you want to know what we can all do, but we each have a part. We have seen 40 years of feminist theology. The missing link has been massive ritualizing in all institutional Christianities and world religions. The time is now. We still have our foremothers. We still have junior scholars writing. We still have organizations like this, and we need to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our four speakers. They were, wow, diverse, amazing, challenging, hard to hear at points, and I don't mean just hard to hear, beautiful to imagine the kind of work that they're doing. They lead us into our discussions. I'd like to welcome those who've joined us. I see one of my friends back there. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Melody Stanford, a former water intern.
And next to you is?
Mariko Yakiyama from Tokyo, Japan.
Welcome, welcome, glad to have you all. These were marvelous. Thank you to each and every one of you. Now we'd like to move into small groups and have conversation. Here's how it works. We stay in this room, and you don't sit with a person you came with. And that is to say those students who, Becky, I don't know, you're like a piper guy. This is marvelous. So everybody grab a student. Make sure that you, every group has to have at least one college or high school student. We had a high school student over here. They're at a premium, these people. They're going to tell us how to do this, especially the technical parts of it. We will have between 15 and 20 minutes in these small groups, and then we will come back together for a plenary conversation with our speakers. I'd ask our speakers to spread yourselves out so you can sit with different groups of people and share your wisdom in those groups as well. So feel free to get up, configure your chairs as you need to, and I will call us back in about 15 to 20 minutes, max. Thank you. One of you who has music as her or his art should start a song. We're going to shout. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. This has been an amazing session.
I don't have my stuff yet. I haven't had time.
That's because of our amazing speakers. So one more time, please thank our speakers. Amazing speakers and amazing content, and each of you who brought your life experience to the group too. Thank you so much for being here. Let me just make a couple of announcements before we move into the plenary discussion. First, I'd like to remind you that this conversation will continue tomorrow in a session at 9 o'clock in the morning, Cultivating Minds, where the caucus will continue this session. It will be at Hyatt Hanover B from 9 to 11:30. There will be additional presentations. There will be discussion of this conversation, these papers, and I think it will be just a wonderful, Elizabeth, thank you for collaborating with us again. It will be a wonderful way to extend the discussion. Secondly, Diane New is waiting for those sign-up sheets. If you have not signed them.
They look like this. So if you haven't gotten one, oh, lots of people have. Who needs them, okay? There are some coming around.
And that will get you on the Google list, and that will get you information. Isn't it helpful what you get from the Feminist Liberation Theologians list? I think a lot of it is vetted carefully so that you don't get a lot, but what you do get, I hope, is useful. Well, we like to have...
Emails change, so I wouldn't assume.
My third announcement is feel free to take a drink from the machine out there when you leave. That is the hotel's reparations for
Are you serious?
jerking us around. Yes, they're very kind to send us the drinks. I want to make sure, especially the students who assign themselves to take a drink on the way out.
It's Coca-Cola, you mean the ladder.
And I'm told, my next announcement is I'm told there's somebody who knows how to get what I have, and you can drool over it. This is called Squaring the Womanist Circle by Katie Cannon. I haven't given this, and if I'm told there's somebody here in the room where's Erica? Okay, who knows how to procure these for us? So Erica.
Are really on the house.
Yes. So.
If you sign the list.
We in Atlanta.
It's just bad advertising for women.
It's Coca-Cola. We're in Atlanta. We don't go to They don't sell it here.
And my final announcement is that we at Water are happy to hear your ideas and suggestions. Be in touch with us during the year. I hope you picked up a Water newsletter. If you didn't, there are a few kicking around. So again, welcome to Water. And it is wonderful to have former Water interns here. Where's Melody? I think there she is, who was with us last summer. And
who redesigned the logo, by the way.
Yeah.
Yay.
And the website.
Yay.
And we did have another young woman whose mother is here, who lent us her daughter. I don't think she'd like to have you say that, but she would argue it. She was a sophomore in college and as good as anybody we've ever had, so there you go. And it's really wonderful to have young women. We have a person from the Mennonite Voluntary Service Program and a person from the Loretto Voluntary Service Program. Kelly was a Loretto volunteer some years ago. Not at Water, unfortunately, but at another organization called New Waves Ministry. So there are lots of opportunities, especially for young people, to get involved in this work, and I highly recommend it, and talk to any of these people who put their hands up and tell you about it. So, yeah, and Monica Marcus, to my right, I have to save the best for last, to my immediate right, the very first Water intern ever in the history of creation.
Wait a minute, Monica, that was like 1985 or 4 before 80.
Oh, wow.
And she's still closing the right.
I was in childcare at Water at that point. I was in childcare. So, we would like to do two things in this plenary session. One is to have some conversation about what you heard in your groups that you thought was new in terms of the use of arts and the promotion of feminist liberation, theological ideas. What are some of the advantages of doing that? What did you hear? Just give us a little bit of a sample of what you've heard and what you think is urgent about this. And then we'll turn in the second 10 minutes that we have to how we continue the discussion next year with modification of this theme or another theme that we will glean from your wisdom this afternoon. So the floor is open, and of course the speakers are here and happy to answer questions if need be, but I think since they were part of groups, we'll just hear from people whose groups they were part of. So the floor is open. Please identify yourself and make your comments brief so we can hear from lots of folks. Go ahead. Marie Fortune.
Well, I got thinking about all of it. All good. But in terms of working on gender-based violence, the critical importance of naming one's experience of violence and the many ways that people need to do that. And that's one of the problems liturgically is we need to be able to do that liturgically, and that's where the resistance comes. Because our faith communities don't want to do that.
That's right.
And we don't want to go through the painful part of the naming in order to get to the next part and whatever healing process we can share in community. But I thought, and what all of you shared, it's such an important part of the whole process of dealing with gender-based violence and trauma in general. And how do we do that in feminist ways to be able to not turn away from it?
I think that is a very, very powerful commentary. And in our small group, we were speaking about the silence. I mean, with what's happened recently with Paris, what I've noticed is publicly in all spaces, silence is the place that opens up a space where we all have shared experience of something around violence. How that could be framed and maybe institutionally introduced so that congregations of all varieties feel, at least with silence, it might be a place to start.
And the problem is, I mean, the flip side of that is the silencing
Right, that's right.
of the voices that need, or the expressions that need to be made. And so that's the, yeah.
That's very helpful. Yes. And your name?
Phyllis Carroll. It doesn't come from the group, but I'm compelled to comment to this because we just had a very powerful experience. We did two things at the Women's Assembly that were kind of remarkable. We shared a film that was done by 1 Billion Rising, which is about gender-based violence and is very graphic. At its beginning, it was a big risk to screen it. There were 7,000 people in the room. But it transforms, and it transforms with music and with images of women essentially praying and then dancing. And we incorporated, at the conclusion of both the Assembly and the Women's Plenary, a group called Sheroes, which are women of, it's not faith-based, but these are women who have been, and some men, who've been the victims of domestic violence or violence of one sort or another, rape or abuse. And they dance. And it's profound because its body is instrument and dance is healing. And both the film and the dance end with women standing and raising their hand, and 1 billion rising, because 1/3 of the world's population of women, 1 in 3 women will be abused. And so it ends like this, and at the end of the assembly, were 3,500 women and men, and they were standing like this, and at the end of the plenary, there was 7,000 people. They were standing silently like this, and it was unbelievably powerful. It's the kind of thing that's dangerous to do. It's very risky to play that because it's very raw, but the power, the impact of an artistic expression on film, and then the dance. I mean, this group is all over the world, and they dance. They started as a flash mob, but they teach it, and then they come and they will perform. So it's a possibility for activating within communities that might not do it themselves, but who, once the force is introduced, will respond.
I'm curious if, because I hear about gender violence, if any group talks about the violence of white supremacy and what it means to divest of white supremacy, how you're benefiting from white supremacy at the price that people of color have to pay. Did any group deal with that one? And what did you come up with? Or was it all gender?
No, our group did.
What did you come up with?
Well, I'll pass it.
Well, I'm doing my art expression on something I experienced that I hated being on the other side. I was downtown, and I was sitting outside of the movie theater waiting for my dad, and there were 2 black women next to me doing the exact same. And a cop came up and spoke to me, was very nice, asked how my day was, and went over to the women and asked them to leave. It was very rude, just telling them they didn't belong there, they shouldn't be there, and continued to wave to me and hope that I had a nice day. And it was horrible.
So the conversation in the group was how to ritualize that, how to make a statement, how to acknowledge and bring attention to it. Poetry, group listening, performance were the kinds of things that she raised.
Katie. Yeah, I was in that group too, and I shared after we heard her story. I just think what's so important is intersectionality, and that that we make the connections between all of the isms and all of the justice issues. And I was telling them about, I don't know how many of you know Patty Dye, D-I-G-H. She's in North Carolina, but she does online seminars. And in December, I was telling them about, in December, I took an online course on racism every Sunday night. From 6 to 7:30, there were almost 300 people from all over the nation that took this, and we really got at the deep stuff about white privilege and microaggressions, and I mean, it's a fabulous course. She's doing one now coming up on Islam, and so you can find her, Google D-I-G-H. She has a fabulous staff of people and speakers, and we read so much. So anyway, I just shared that, and I absolutely think, I just spent 6 weeks teaching a group at our church on the new Jim Crow, And, you know, for me, it's all about gender and race, and you have to, and sexuality, we just have to do that work. Class, all of it.
Really question, is anybody doing any work on the vigil for Sandra Bland? There's a vigil. There's a Methodist clergy woman who comes out from Houston, and she holds vigil, and it was daily for a long time. I don't know if she's still there. This is the young clergy woman who was she had her phone up when the sheriff came up and told her to get back to the Church of Satan. If you haven't seen any of those videos, but she's it's a religious practice that she stands in solidarity with the other clergy in Waller County, and I don't know if anybody's doing any work on those rituals.
I didn't know about this. Why don't you put some of these things on the Feminist Liberation Theologians list so that people can look at this with the citation for your course and this woman's name. Put them up on the list, and then people will have access to them.
Okay.
Let's have time for another person, anybody else from the discussions, and then I want to move to where should this discussion go? Where are we going with this?
Next year in San Antonio.
Next year in San Antonio. Traveling road show next year in San Antonio. But because as you can see, we followed a progression in this group. We've looked at deconstructing the idea of theology, of feminism, of liberation. We've looked at some of the successes of the way in which programs have been carried out. And now, last year we looked at a very specific way at the questions of violence, and Marie and Karen and others have been meeting this week at the Carter Center to look at how those questions can be worked out in theological education. Where do we take this conversation? Where does this take us next? Do we, anybody want to hazard a suggestion or an idea? Or maybe just a couple of themes, just let them go quickly around.
Stories, I like stories and
Stories, Jane likes
self-expression.
stories, okay.
Our group talked about the intentionality of art instead of making that part of an intentional expression and part of your life and your work, rather than being something to add in, making it a part of who you are and what your work is.
And so that would be an integral part of doing feminist liberation theologies, womanist theologies. The arts would be integrated. Okay, any other people? Some other themes?
What she mentioned about intersectionality.
Intersectional.
I think pedagogy too, right? So getting students to do those kinds, I think folks had mentioned, do those kinds of projects in their classroom, like all these students are doing, and I think somebody on the panel mentioned as well, just workshopping different kinds of assignments that get folks doing things other than just textual, but also then alternative types of texts.
Melody?
Strategies for community organizing and activism, what it means to actually build communities that come together and work on projects together.
Tom?
Yeah, I was impressed with the work on museums because 20 years ago, seeing the Anthropological Museum in Mexico, I said the groups there should plan a tour that used it to concientizar instead of just swallowing the patriarchy that was all over the place. And I think that can be done probably with most any museum. And so
we need to get you out there.
Getting guided tours that give a little conscience instead of just swallowing patriarchy.
Yeah, just to respond to that in light of community organizing, one of the things the foundation has done in the city of Quito is invite diverse collectives, not just for this specific project, but in general to come. And although the permanent exhibits aren't necessarily changed, the collectives are invited to come in and together, like different ones at the same time, and see the exhibit and then talk about what's missing. And what would they add? And they have it's a really rich analysis.
Great. Let's go over here, and then we have one more, and then I've got a couple of ideas. Go ahead.
So this is partly related to what you did, Dr. Gannon. I've been very concerned about how do you have difficult conversations in context where it scares the bejesus out of people. And it seems to me that what you just modeled with your own artwork and the whole focus that we're doing on art, that's a really kind of brilliant way to get people past their defensive brains and to another level, and using this as a medium in order to have some of those difficult conversations in contexts where people don't want to talk about it.
Go ahead.
If anybody
else is interested, I'd be very interested in San Antonio next year in actually doing some ritual, some feminist, maybe Sophia theology ritual, if we could find a time to do that.
Again, that's the sort of thing you might use the list for and invite people to join you for and set a place in it. I think certainly some of the white privilege, living white in a racist society would be something we could usefully look at in the context of feminist liberation theologies. Clearly terrorism is something we need to be looking at understanding. Islamophobia, I mean, there's a lot of things we could be. Refugees, yeah.
Especially because we're
Yeah.
Well, and in San Antonio in particular, the people who are coming across the Texas-Mexico border now are not majority from Mexico. The one day I was there was a car of 8 Cubans that arrived at a shelter, and they were just passing through. And I heard some discourse about the presence of Cuban refugees and how they are viewed by other immigrants. And yesterday, 2 Syrian families surrendered to the border control in Laredo. So the folks who are coming across the Texas-Mexico border there, and then they're held in Dilley, Texas, which is right outside of San Antonio. So there's a whole lot of issues around that's right there.
Yeah, I think the New York Times reported today more Mexicans are leaving the U.S. than coming, which is interesting. Anybody else, a last suggestion or comment? You may send them to us at water@hers.com. We're always at our email. So I want to thank everybody.
Not yet. Page 3 is missing. But you
I want to thank once again our speakers. I want to thank all of you for being here. And I'd like to suggest that we end as we began, in silence, just so that and it's not a silence about things we don't want to talk about. It's a silence that will prepare us for hard conversations that we need to have all weekend long and when we go home. Again, thank you for being here, and take a moment together in silence, not to silence anyone, but to open our hearts and our minds to hear and to speak as we must. Thank you and have a great meeting.